and Rutland, 2006, Pettigrew et al., 2007. "You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist," said Indira Gandhi in 1971. However, mere contact is not always enough. In most desegregated schools, ethnic groups resegregate themselves in the lunchroom and on the school grounds. Clack et al., 2005, Schofield, 1986. People in each group often think that they would welcome more contact with the other group, but they assume the other group does not reciprocate the wish. Richardson and Shelton, 2007. "I don't reach out to them because I don't want to be rebuffed. They don't reach out to me because they're just not interested." When such mirror image misperceptions are corrected, friendships may then form and prejudices melt. Cooperation. To see if enemies could overcome their differences, researcher Muzaffar Sharif, 1966, first instigated conflict. He placed 22 Oklahoma City boys in two separate areas of a Boy Scout camp. He then put the two groups through a series of competitive activities with prizes going to the victors. Before long, each group became intensely proud of itself and hostile to the other group's sneaky, smart-alecky strikers. Food wars broke out during the meals. Cabins were ransacked. Fistfights had to be broken up by members of the camp staff. When Sharif brought the two groups together, they avoided one another except to taunt and threaten. Nevertheless, within a few days, Sharif transformed these young enemies into jovial comrades. He gave them superordinate goals, shared goals that overrode their differences and that could be achieved only through cooperation. A planned disruption of the camp water supply necessitated that all 22 boys work together to restore water. Renting a movie in those pre-DVD days required their pooled resources. A stalled truck needed the combined force of all the boys pulling and pushing together to get it moving. Having used isolation and competition to make strangers into enemies, Sharif used shared predicaments and goals to reconcile the enemies and make them friends. What reduced conflict was not mere contact, but cooperative contact. A shared predicament, a fearsome external threat, and a superordinate desire to overcome it, likewise had a powerful unifying effect in the weeks after 9/11. Patriotism soared as Americans felt that we were under attack. Gallup surveyed approval of our president shot up from 51% the week before the attack to a highest ever level of 90% 10 days after, just surpassing the previous approval rating record of 89% enjoyed by his father, George Bush, at the climax of the 1991 Persian Gulf War. Newport, 2002. In chat groups and everyday speech, even the word "we" relative to "I" surged in the immediate aftermath. Pennebaker, 2002. Cooperation has especially positive effects when it leads people to define a new inclusive group that dissolves their former subgroups. DeVideo and Gaertner, 1999. Seat the members of two groups not on opposite sides, but alternately around the table. Give them a new shared name. Have them work together. Such experiences change us and them into we. Those once perceived as being in another group now are seen as part of one's own group. One 18-year-old New Jersey man would not be surprised. After 9/11, he explained a shift in his social identity. "I just thought of myself as black, but now I feel like I'm an American more than ever." Sengupta, 2001. In one experiment, white Americans who read a newspaper article about a terrorist threat against all Americans subsequently expressed reduced prejudice against African Americans. DeVideo et al., 2004. Most of us have overlapping identities which unite us with very different groups. We can love what we are without hating what and who we are not. We can thrive in our own tradition even as we learn from others. Former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan, Nobel Prize Lecture, 2001. During the 1970s, several teams of educational researchers simultaneously wondered if cooperative contacts between members of rival groups encourage positive attitudes, could we apply this principle in multicultural schools? Could we promote interracial friendships by replacing competitive classroom situations with cooperative ones? And could cooperative learning maintain or even enhance student achievement? Many experiments with adolescents from 11 countries confirm that in all three cases the answer is yes. Roseth, Johnson & Johnson, 2008. Members of interracial groups who work together on projects and play together on athletic teams typically come to feel friendly toward those of another race. So do those who engage in cooperative classroom learning. So encouraging are these results that thousands of teachers have introduced interracial cooperative learning into their classroom. I am prepared this day to declare myself a citizen of the world and to invite everyone everywhere to embrace this broader vision of our interdependent world, our common quest for justice, and ultimately for peace on earth. Father Theodore Hesburgh, The Human Imperative, 1974. The power of cooperative activity to make friends of former enemies has led psychologists to urge increased international exchange and cooperation. Kleinberg, 1984. As we engage in mutually beneficial trade, as we work to protect our common destiny on this fragile planet, and as we become more aware that our hopes and fears are shared, we can change misperceptions that feed conflict into a solidarity based on common interests. Working toward shared goals enables diverse peoples to discover unity in their common values and superordinate identity. Common values are what we need, declared the chair of Britain's Commission for Racial Equality as ethnic tensions recently flared. Phillips, 2004. There is no ethnicity here. We are all Rwandan, proclaimed Rwanda's government as it sought to resolve historic animosities between Tutsis and Hutus. Lacey, 2004. Western democracies have largely been spared ethnic tribal warfare because their different racial groups have shared so many of the very same goals, noted sociologist Amitai Etzioni in 1999. In the United States, these shared goals include fair treatment for all, higher moral standards, and a wish that all high school graduates understand the common history and ideas that tie all Americans together. Although diversity commands attention, we are, as working toward shared goals reminds us, more alike than different. We often forget how much unites all the members of humanity, declared President Ronald Reagan in 1987. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to recognize this common bond. Echoing those words, climate protection advocate Al Gore in 2007 noted, "We, all of us, now face a universal threat which requires us, in Reagan's phrase, to unite in recognition of our common bond." Communication. When real-life conflicts become intense, a third-party mediator, a marriage counselor, labor mediator, diplomat, community volunteer, may facilitate much-needed communication. Rubin et al., 1994. Mediators help each party to voice its viewpoint and to understand the others. By leading each side to think about others' underlying needs and goals, the mediator aims to replace a competitive win-lose orientation with a cooperative win-win orientation that offers a mutually beneficial resolution. A classic example: two friends, after quarreling over an orange, agreed to split it. One squeezed his half for juice. The other used the peel from her half to make a cake. If only the two had understood each other's motives, they could have hit on the win-win solution of one having all of the juice, the other all the peel. Such understanding and cooperative resolution is most needed, yet least likely, in times of anger or crisis. Bodenhausen et al., 1994. Tetlock, 1988. Conciliation. When conflicts intensify, images become more stereotyped, judgments more rigid, and communication more difficult or even impossible. Each party is likely to threaten, coerce, or retaliate. In the weeks before the Persian Gulf War, the first President George Bush threatened, in the full glare of publicity, to kick Saddam's ass. Saddam Hussein communicated in kind, threatening to make Americans swim in their own blood. Under such conditions, is there an alternative to war or surrender? Social psychologist Charles Osgood, 1962-1980, advocated a strategy of graduated and reciprocated initiatives in tension reduction, nicknamed GRIT. In applying GRIT, one side first announces its recognition of mutual interests and its intent to reduce tensions. It then initiates one or more small conciliatory acts. Without weakening one's retaliatory capability, this modest beginning opens the door for reciprocity by the other party. Should the enemy respond with hostility, one reciprocates in kind. But so too with any conciliatory response. Thus, U.S. President John Kennedy's gesture of stopping atmospheric nuclear tests began a series of reciprocated conciliatory acts that culminated in the 1993 Atmospheric Test Ban Treaty. In laboratory experiments, grit has been an effective strategy for increasing trust and cooperation. Linskold et al., 1978-1988. Even during intense personal conflict, when communication has been non-existent, a small conciliatory gesture, a smile, a touch, a word of apology may work wonders. Conciliations allow both parties to begin edging down the tension ladder to a safer rung where communication and mutual understanding can begin. And how good that such can happen, for civilization advances not by cultural isolation, maintaining walls around ethnic enclaves, but by tapping the knowledge, the skills, and the arts that are each culture's legacy to the whole human race. Thomas Sowell in 1991 observed that, thanks to cultural sharing, every modern society is enriched by a cultural mix. We have China to thank for paper and printing, and for the magnetic compass that opened the great explorations. We have Egypt to thank for trigonometry. We have the Islamic world and India's Hindus to thank for our Arabic numerals. While celebrating and claiming these diverse cultural legacies, we can also welcome the enrichment of today's social diversity. We can view ourselves as instruments in a human orchestra, and we can therefore affirm our own culture's heritage while building bridges of communication, understanding, and cooperation across cultural traditions as we think about, influence, and relate to one another.